I'm just going to start off by saying this. What I'm about to talk about is completely ridiculous. And sometimes I'm like, okay, maybe Uber and Lyft, maybe sometimes they're not all that bad. But then I hear about this and I'm like, okay, this is getting ridiculous. Now, on this article, as you can see here, in late 2019, California lawmakers passed AB 5, hoping to make it harder for companies such as Uber to skirt labor laws and offload healthcare and unemployment insurance costs to taxpayers by misclassifying workers as contractors. A whole thing came into play with this, and it was called Prop 22. Essentially, should Uber and Lyft drivers be independent contractors or employees? It was this huge thing in California. There was even a rumor about a potential strike. Long story short, because Uber and Lyft put in an insane amount of money, Uber and Lyft drivers are now still independent contractors driving here in California. I will say they do get some extra benefits, which is huge, but there's a lot of tricky things that come into play when you stay as an independent contractor. You don't get that many rights, your account can almost get deactivated at no warning, and a lot more. So, going down here, in an attempt to prove its independence argument, in January of 2020, Uber gave California drivers more control, which is good, by allowing them to set their own prices for rides and see passengers' destinations before picking them up. After Prop 22 did get passed, Uber was like, you know what? We don't really need to do this anymore. Now that Uber no longer needs to convince California authorities that its drivers are independent, the company plans to reclaim control, revoking the price setting and passenger destination features it gave drivers barely a year ago, the San Francisco Chronicle reported. The main reason why Uber did this? Too many drivers took advantage of the control Uber gave them, picking the most profitable rides while declining others. I'll get to that in a little bit, which makes it harder for the customer to get rides and hurt Uber's business, the company said. 1/3 of drivers turned down 80% of the rides. And now looking at another article, it says here, among the most recent changes drivers say is a reduction in mileage rates from the Los Angeles International Airport, an important source of income and rides for many drivers. And then going down here even further, though the multiplier option and features for drivers to turn down unwanted rides has largely been revoked, like I said, passenger fees were increased by Uber and Lyft despite claims from app companies ahead of Prop 22 that such fees wouldn't be increased and that drivers aren't being fairly paid proportions of fee increases. Lyft has implemented similar fee structures, charging customers primetime surge fees while paying drivers smaller proportions of those additional fees. I could now go on and on showing you different articles and different reports by different drivers and getting more into the nitty-gritty math, essentially, of what's going on with Lyft and Uber. But this is insane. I mean, the fact that they saw a bunch of drivers try to get the most profitable rides and reject roughly about 80% of them, well, that makes a lot of sense. And I hate to say it, but for Lyft and Uber, isn't that telling you something? Like, for me, it's kind of ridiculous because years ago when I was driving, probably back in like 2015 we're talking, Uber and Lyft only took about a 20% cut, so you still made a good amount of money. However, Uber and Lyft is taking so much money now from the drivers, and you're not really getting compensated enough, especially, as I showed you here, the fact that, let's say, there could be a high surge rate as a passenger, but yet as a driver, you almost get paid as if there's no surge at all. And this, to me, which is super unfortunate, just shows that over time, it's, I hate to say it, getting almost worse and worse to be an Uber and Lyft driver. I mean, the more and more I'm reading these reports and seeing different things, again, this varies as well, state to state. I've talked about that in other videos. Your location is a big factor to determine, or if not the number one factor, to determine how much money you can make as a driver. There's so many different laws going into place, and obviously Uber and Lyft want people to stay as independent contractors. I heavily went back and forth about Prop 22 because when I did some videos on it, half the drivers I talked to said, you know what, Mark, I really want to stay as an independent contractor. I really want the flexible schedule. I really want it to be instantaneously flexible. I can turn on the app whenever I want. I can turn it off whenever I want. That's what I really want. I saw that side of it. But then other drivers were like, look, I don't know, because if we become employees, that might be a good thing. We can become protected. Uber and Lyft can't do all this weird stuff with almost no warning. And because we're independent contractors, we just don't have that many rights. And like I said, after Prop 22 was put into place, Uber and Lyft drivers here in California are staying as independent contractors, and they do get a little more benefits. I will say that. There are some pros after Prop 22 that didn't exist before. But even still, I just see this getting significantly worse, seeing the way Uber and Lyft is treating its drivers. And don't get me wrong, on this channel, I see so many different comments, and a lot of people hate Lyft and Uber. A lot of people are like, hey, Mark, I'm not gonna lie, I make my own hours, and I get paid pretty well driving for Lyft and Uber. And I think that's awesome. Like I said, your location really is the make or break, especially now that a lot of states, and also too on the federal level, it is starting to become more of an issue of, should rideshare drivers have to get even commercial plates? Should they be classified as employees or stay as independent contractors? Obviously, Uber and Lyft wants all drivers to stay as independent contractors. That goes without saying. However, with stuff like this happening, it's becoming more and more apparent that Uber and Lyft drivers need to get a lot more rights for them driving. Even though, yes, Prop 22 was, I think, a good step in the right direction with some of the clauses behind it, there is still a lot of stuff that Uber and Lyft is doing. This is a prime example of that, that's just making it harder and harder for drivers to be able to make ends meet, especially if you look at the past 5 or 6 years. When I first started driving, and I think it was like the end of 2014, beginning of 2015, I mean, how much money you can make as a driver has just gone down tremendously. And that's a huge impact to the entire ride-sharing community. And then Lyft and Uber is coming out saying, oh my God, we have a huge shortage. A lot of drivers are not on the road. And I know what that's like. When I go out here now in LA, it's very difficult to get Lyft and Uber. But guess what? There's a reason why. There is a reason why there's not that many drivers on the road. And yes, you can say maybe it's COVID and the pandemic. That definitely has something to do with it. But I think the biggest thing is you're just not getting paid that much. Now, granted, I will say, to look at both sides, I always think it's important to look at the pros and the cons. They are giving you a lot more bonuses. I've already done a couple of videos about that they're doing a ton of bonus structures right now, so you can make a lot of money as a Lyft and Uber driver. But once those bonuses go away and they keep doing stuff like this, I don't know. I mean, Lyft and Uber might be shooting themselves in the foot.